And I will call the March 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee on Policing Policies to order. And in attendance, we have Joe Homan, we have Paul, and we have Ron, and we have Paul Miller, Ron Collier, Sandra Berry, Mark McCarter, Sherry Sachs, and Dira Gatlin, and Sean Weiss, and we have Chief Dustin Rogers. And yeah, and did I leave anybody out? No, I think we got everybody. There may be a few others coming on. I'll admit them from the admitting room when they get here, but Chief Rogers is on a couple of items. I see Neil Gould's about to come in, so we'll bring him in. And as explained, I emailed briefly, exigent circumstances at the city, we are not done with the legal review in our legal department of the recommendations, but that we did not see that as a reason to not meet, because there are other things we can and should talk about in the interim. And so we are here. Chief Rogers has some things he'd like to present on and get some input on. And without further ado, Chief, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been some time seeing the group. It's been a few months. I hope everybody had a good holiday season. Everybody's doing well and staying healthy. Given the time that has passed, I also want to reassure the group that the concept and the idea of formally reviewing your proposals is still being worked on and will still be considered once it goes through legal for implementation into our future and ongoing use of force policy. So again, I just want to reassure the group that has not been forgotten about, and it is just it is pending, and it will be reviewed at some point as soon as we can. So any questions from anybody about that?
Chief?
Sir?
Who actually is reviewing? What's
Our
the
law
process?
director, our law director, Luke McConville.
Okay. And he's determining what?
He is assessing all of what has been proposed to him to make sure that there is not legal issues with what's being proposed to be incorporated into policy.
And then what's the next step after that?
Once he's done with his legal review and recommendations, then I will take into consideration his recommendation and go forward with what can then be acknowledged at my level of implementation into possible policies going forward.
And do our city council have to vote on these recommendations to be implemented? Or is it up to
Policies?
you?
No, these are administrative policies. So no, they don't have to go to council.
They don't have to. Okay, fine.
Not only do they don't have to go, they shouldn't go to council. These are administrative policies.
Okay, fine. Great. Thanks, Chief, very much.
No, not a problem at all. I'll start with item 1 on the agenda, that being a policy that was forwarded to the group. I hope everybody had a chance to see it or they did receive it, which is policy 341, identified as community relations. Working with Lexipol on these policies, there is an emerging best practice that's being recognized to have some type of formal arrangements with stakeholders from the community where we can have meetings on a reoccurring and long-term basis to identify some of the matters in the policy that would be of mutual interest for discussion purposes, and where input can be obtained and provided collectively between my position and again stakeholders from the city and from the community. So what this policy is just formalizing this practice going forward and ensuring that it does continue, because it is important. It also recognizes some of the work that's been done by this group. And my goal is to ultimately have at some point this year a defined community advisory committee under some of the guidelines in this policy that will be up and running in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2021. That is the goal. We still need to go through some things in terms of policy and procedure as well that needs to be defined. And there's also an element where it has to be legal considerations to collaborate with the law director to make sure we're doing everything properly. So this policy has been created. It will it is expected to acknowledge and incorporate the work that has been going on for the long term for the agency, even when I'm not here or members of the community, move on or are no longer here, that this practice is important. It's vital to community relations and helping guide police services. And this is the framework that can be laid to ensure that's always done between the police and the community in University Heights. So is there any questions or feedback on that?
Good evening, Chief Rogers. How will these members come to play? We'll get these members from the community. Like, will it be this group, or will it like be different people from the group? And how many and how represented will it? The University Heights is a very diverse community. How much will minorities will be, persons of color, will be at the table with this?
Well, again, the policy is kind of the framework and the groundwork to then create procedure where we're going to identify more specifics on how the committee is made up, who's represented. Parameters are in place to ensure that there's accurate representation of the demographic of those that we serve in the community. And also things like meeting dates and frequency and how many people will be on the committee, what type of training they'll get that would be specific to this responsibility. Those are the kind of things that we're gonna have to define in procedure that would be a supplement to this policy. But this policy in itself is the first step in the direction of formalizing a long-term community advisory committee that we can work with as a police department going forward. And I think that's going to be more of the work that needs to be done this year to more define the expectation of this committee and how we work with them.
Thank you very much, sir.
Do we know of any other cities that have committees such like this that we know work?
Usually they're in bigger cities. Where they have things like use of force occur on a regular basis or employee complaints occur on a regular basis, not because they're doing anything wrong, but just because they're a larger department. Those are things that have to have more of a day-to-day responsibility and input in as well. But that doesn't mean that can't be beneficial to a department or community our size. Everything is scalable and everything could be beneficial depending on how it's implemented. At this time, I can't tell you for sure throughout the region who has one and who doesn't. What I can say is Luxapol recognizes it as a best practice, regardless of agency size or municipal size of the community. And I respect that perspective as well, which is why we have this policy before us.
Okay.
All right, if there's nothing else for that agenda item, I'll move on to the next policy. Again, I hope everybody had a chance that they got it and they had a chance to look at it. This concept, which is policy 321, procedural justice and police legitimacy. So this is actually a training curriculum that I've mandated for officers here at the agency to take part in every even year. This is a nationally recognized curriculum where there is without a doubt a significant amount of benefit for officers to take certain types of approaches and how they deal with people in the field or at work. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. A lot of what is before you in this policy is really consistent with general customer service type functions when dealing with people. But I view it as with law enforcement, we're regularly in situations that can escalate very quickly. So it's very important that we have parameters in place to help guide us, not just to de-escalate, which would be a benefit of this, but really how to treat people. We have various policies that are specific to code of conduct and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And this curriculum that we have to take part in every 2 years gets very specific, and it breaks it down very simply in my perspective, that we can take certain approaches in how we treat people and how we respond to people that will, without a doubt, increase the likelihood and the chances for the situation resulting in a positive outcome. And again, regardless of an enforcement action or not, the perception of how we do our business is very important to police legitimacy, or the community's perspective of police legitimacy. So what I did is, in looking at this curriculum that we take that's nationally recognized, I reviewed multiple analyses of this training, and all the analysis that I've read pretty much unanimously says how beneficial the steps are of procedural justice for officers to take in the field, and that meaningful implementations need to occur to recognize some of these principles. Again, just going through them, you know, the acronym of LEAD, where, you know, listening, explaining, equity, and dignity, those are very specific. And again, all the analysis that have been done of this curriculum says that meaningful implementation should occur consistent with procedural justice actions for officers. So in my perspective, Lexipol didn't have a policy for this. And given that, you know, law enforcement customer service is always on the forefront of community concern, and rightfully so. You know, my idea is, you know, if the analysis all say how beneficial this curriculum is and it should be implemented, that the first step of implementing anything is a policy. So I kind of created a policy from scratch with these learning points from the classes that we take every 2 years, and I put some teeth into it because I feel like we can do more in terms of the expectation we have for officers and how we deal with people. And this is a step towards that, where we're giving them specific expectations. We're giving them the training to do, and really we're creating a policy that says you need to practice this recognized training in the field. And Lexipol reviewed the policy that I created, and they said they'd never really seen anything like that, but they supported it. So they didn't get in the way of it. They reviewed it. They had no, you know, the issues with it conflicting with any recognized best practices or anything in law or anything that would be a recognized standard anywhere throughout the state. And this is kind of what it came out as is policy 321, procedural justice and police legitimacy, where it says and requires officers to practice the procedural justice elements during all interactions with the public. Obviously, absent exigent circumstances or circumstances that would create risk for officers or the public, but that they're required to utilize these specific concepts. So again, it's kind of a policy we've never seen here before, but it's a training curriculum we see regularly, and my perspective is, if it's going to be a meaningful implementation that's been recommended by various analysis of this curriculum, then the first step is a policy in requiring it. So, Ms. Sachs.
Okay.
So I'm thrilled to see that it starts with definitions. I think that that's right there with objectives. And the key to like the positive response that you received was likely due to those things. You know, the more clearly you can communicate what your, first of all, identify the objectives, and you know, it shows what your mission is for that policy, and then define all the steps of the way, the more likely you're not only going to have something that looks nice on paper, but you're going to be able to communicate that, start from the top and down and across with the entire, whatever, police force.
Mhm.
So I think that's wonderful. It's just wonderful that you took those, just even that suggestion, I can tell, and put that to good use. Thank you.
So you said this was a training. How many of our police officers have had the training so far?
So I've mandated this training for all officers every other year. This would be part of a training sequence that would be one of many trainings that would help enhance our services and interacting with people in the field that we're required to do every 2 years.
Yeah.
Paul? You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted, Paul.
Somebody mute him.
Mute. Unmute.
Unmute. You're muted. Yeah, he's not even looking.
A message.
Paul, you're muted, dude. There you go. I think you got it.
I think he sees. No, yeah, there you go. All right.
I only respond to dude. It's the only thing I ever respond to.
I say that
Thanks.
word all the time. So
Thanks. How do we know that the policy is being adhered to, being carried out on a daily basis?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How
Okay.
do you know it's being adhered to in a day-to-day?
Well, we'll start with when we hire an officer. They have a 3-month comprehensive training program where they're required to go through all the policies and they're assessed on a daily basis to ensure that their performance in the field is reflective of policies, expectations, and their knowledge, skills, and abilities are constantly evolving to a level that we feel that we would be confident that they would be a long-term asset to the community. And if they're not, and if they don't show these types of behaviors consistent with our policy, which is taught in our field training for 3 months, we don't retain individuals. In addition to that, we have the ability and requirement to do audits for officers of their body cam footage, random audits where we review how officers interact with the public in the field. We also have annual evaluations where this type of policy and dimension would be assessed on a regular basis. And we also, our supervisors show up in the field on calls and regularly respond to assist officers in the field where they can not only assist the residents on a service call, but they're constantly assessing their subordinates as well to ensure that their behavior is fulfilling the requirements that have been set by the administration.
I'm just curious, do you systematically ride with new and old officers on a regular basis?
I do not personally, no. We do have
Okay.
lieutenants that do regularly work in the field randomly or as needed for shortages, and our command staff does have a very good feel of day-to-day operations in the field and what officers are doing. But me personally, I have not made time to do that, no.
Okay, and when they ride with them, do they issue a written report as to what transpired?
But they don't
during that
actually,
ride with?
they wouldn't actually physically ride with the officers.
They do
Again,
not.
with the involvement of technology, and we do have policies that require that officers wear body cameras in the field and that they're activated during every public encounter. We really have the luxury now of getting multiple immediate assessments of officers in the field without actually having to be there. So if it's not their body camera that we can assess, it's also their dash cam from their cruiser, in which they also have a transmitter that they're recorded on that we can assess as well. So I don't want to mitigate the benefit of possibly riding with officers, but because of some of the technology advances that we have, that may have taken a back seat because of our other abilities to have administrative oversight on our officers and to check in on their performances more so electronically than in person.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chief Rogers, I have a question for you.
Go for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think I agree with everyone that these are excellent ideas, excellent policies. I would like to know more about how you handle the equity portion of this. Particularly, it says that you have to, the decisions have to be fair and free of bias. That's one thing. How do you do that? And the other is that consistently applied legal principles and policies and procedures. It seems that the basis for that may be challenging. I'd like to know how you handle that.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, part of our job and our function is to go out in the field and show up at a call where we don't know people. They're likely experiencing a traumatic event, or they're in crisis, or they're in a situation that's escalated the level of our involvement. And the equity function of how we handle our business is always challenging. I'm not implying that we have biases, but what I'm saying is, trying to create solutions to situations that is beneficial to as many people as possible, or the general public, is something that we're always balancing, and every situation is different, in ensuring that everything we're doing is consistent and reflective of laws or best practice, or what everybody wants at the scene. It's constantly a balancing, I guess, a balancing of all the needs that we experience from those we're serving in the public at a specific time with our obligations. I think what equity really says is that whatever our decision making is at a scene, it's not so much what the decision is, it's that it's made based on objective circumstances at the scene, based on the information, the data, the evidence that we know, the laws and the policies that are in place, whether it's in the city or the state or at the department, and that we're constantly following what's required of us, either by law or policy, to make decisions that are based on objective information only. And I think that's the goal of the equity dynamic of LEAD in this policy. But it is not easy. And that's what makes this job, you can say, one of the most challenging jobs there are, because we're trying to balance so many things at one time while people are in crisis sometimes, or it could just be a quality of life issue in response that we're dealing with. But still, to them, that may be their only interaction they ever have with law enforcement. It could be significant to them, but it's not easy, Neil. It's one of the most challenging things that we try to do, is ensure we're always taking the most equitable path possible in our decision making that is influenced by an infinite amount of variables at any given time on a service call.
I think you've done an excellent job in this community, as far as I can see, everything I've observed so far. But it's also the basis for why people get shot with Subway sandwiches in their hands going into their house and whatnot, because it seems like a reasonable and objective decision at the time. And that's one of the battles that we're struggling with in this country overall. And I think that it's really important to be understanding that everybody has bias, and you're not likely to get rid of bias. It's just a matter of what the nature of that bias is, and whether you're conscious of your bias, mm-hmm. and how that affects your decision making.
Yeah, and really that end result in the field is a product of what we try to do administratively vary on, from how we market an entrance test, to how we do background checks, to the amount of assessments we do for an individual before we hire them, whether it's a psych eval, lie detector test, the vendor that we use to do psych evals, we check into them to make sure that they're looking for dimensions that are without a doubt beneficial and applicable to law enforcement, and we've done that, and then from there it goes into the training program, where if people we hire, new officers, are not going to embrace a community service type guardian role for this community, they do not make it through training, and that's just the reality of it. That's why we have probation. And again, with some of the other things that I've talked about in terms of administrative oversight, to include any complaint, we have the ability, because of our size of our department, when we get a complaint, we investigate it. When there's a use of force, we investigate it and look into it. Again, it may be a luxury at this agency because we're not as big as other departments, But what I can say, there's been a lot of administrative effort put forth that when there is a service call and that end product that the department provides on a service call on the scene, we've put a lot of effort into that individual to try to get somebody that can make the most equitable decision possible in the field. And it's a lot of work, but credit also goes to the officer, because the people that are here want to be here because they understand the expectations. They're here for the right reasons, because they want to serve the public. They want to meet your expectations. So a lot of credit goes to them as well. And we do what we can, and we're trying to continue to improve our process from new hire to in the field to, again, accommodate equity in the field. And it's always a daily obligation, but the administration looks forward to it, and so do your officers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. I really appreciate that. That's one thing I will say, that I've talked to other people in other communities that are having their other little groups that are, kind of not similar like this, but different. And they said some things about like the way we do things over here, and how you, Chief Rogers and Lieutenant McArthur, have been so open to hearing us and really talking with us. And it's like, I wish other communities had that type of relationship. And I believe that I'll admit, back in the day, U.S. police was not very friendly towards the community, regardless of what race you were. But I think with Chief Hammond and with you've come a long way, and I appreciate that.
To your point, Ron, one of the things I said in the very beginning when I first started speaking up about these issues was that if we can develop best practices here, we can perhaps be an example for others, small but mighty, especially if we're sharing things in a regional capacity, multi-city, and Chief Rogers, you're showing that leadership. Like you said, you took a concept from Lexipol and you're in the process of best practices policies that they haven't even done yet, and this is the basis. This is where it starts. So I agree. I echo what Ron has said.
Is there anything else anybody care to add at this point? Chief, was there anything you wanted to add in conclusion?
Not at this time, no. Again, there's just those two agenda items. I'd like to thank the group again for meeting here today and putting forth the effort and sacrificing your own time to talk about these matters of mutual concern. So again, with some of the policy that's been proposed here, we would like to formalize this for a long-term type of community engagement and relationship that would be beneficial, without a doubt.
Mayor, would it be appropriate for us to share this with council, these policies?
In what way?
Well, a couple of them said they couldn't make the meeting today, so but they said they wanted to see.
I believe they were emailed.
That's fine.
They
yeah.
did.
Yeah, they
Okay.
should have been emailed, and they still can be if anybody didn't get them.
Okay.
And certainly these it's an ongoing discussion. Sherry?
I want to say one more thing. I hope it doesn't sound Pollyannish, because I think it's serious. But what this policy is an attitude. It really sets the tone of our police department from the top all across. And if it's really, we see this through, and by example and by training every other year and even in between, it really could save lives. I mean, it really could. It goes a long way. So yes, it looks nice on paper, but it feels like it's, you're putting into place at the same time mechanisms to Paul and Neil's points. How do you know? How will you test? How will you circle back? And you'll see that it really, really can go a long way in a meaningful way. So hats off.
And I definitely feel like it's an ongoing process, you know. It needs to carry on and continue to be, because the police officers will be trained, and if they don't come back to it 2 years later, you know, they'll forget it, you know, and they'll lose it. So it really does need to be something that's ongoing every 2 years, the training.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Okay, is there any, before we move on to the next topic, is there anything else anybody wanted to add on to this one? All right, well, then the next item, we put this here more for kind of as a catch-all, but we do have an open discussion section here. If there's anything anybody'd care to bring up at this point or would like to see the committee look at going down the road here, we are, our Mr. McConville, wishes he would have completed the review before now with respect to the use of force, but there have been a number of things that have taken his attention away from that, and I can't get into all those things or even most of those things right now, but I assure you he had some very pressing things he had to deal with since first of the year. Some of those things are still not fully resolved and may not be soon, but he there are times when as mayor I have to help him prioritize. Not everything it can be top priority or nothing is top priority. So there are times when I have to say, Luke, you need to do this. This is the most important thing right now because of timeliness. I know Paul's a lawyer, so he knows how what that struggle is like sometimes. And you don't have to be a lawyer to appreciate that too. But that said, there were a couple of different instances where I knew that by telling Luke that that's something else I had to give him to do, or council had to give him to do, had to take priority over this, that this meant that this may not be done in time for this meeting. And, I accepted that and also appreciated that some things can't be rushed when it comes to making sure there is a thorough and thoughtful job done. So I trust you all understand that. So without getting too much further into that, and I know we kind of covered that already even earlier, is there anything else that anybody'd like to talk about or see as a subject coming up of this committee? Mr. Miller. And you're muted again.
Dude.
You're still muted, Paul.
Still muted, Paul.
I hear you, Paul.
Unmute, dude.
By the way, I do that because I have a 10-pound dog.
Oh, I appreciate that. We all do.
And people don't listen to me, and my dog doesn't listen to me.
But we
So
would all
I
your
can
dog.
mute the dog, but I can't mute the people.
What's your dog's name, Paul?
So, I'm sorry?
What is your dog's name?
Oh, Molly.
Hey, Molly.
Hey, Molly.
Here, Molly.
I'll bring him to City Hall one of these days.
We should have that day at City Hall someday.
But on the serious side, Chief, when an officer or officers go through horrendous situations, God forbid, somebody gets run over, somebody gets shot, is there a mechanism for the officer to meet with a counselor or psychiatrist? Is it required? Is it offered? What is the procedure?
Well, depending on the circumstance, it could require a certain amount of days where they're required to take off from duty. And during that time, there's a lot of functions that would be happening administratively, but also just as important as the city would provide and reiterate the availability of our employee assistance program that we have through the city. That is a very comprehensive program that can provide all types of benefits to city employees, including police officers. They also have some other benefits through the union that could assist them through that process as well. and again, there's also regional services that we could call in administratively to help that officer as well. But that is all defined in policy as well. It's required to be
Okay.
acknowledged, and we're fully aware that officers deal with a lot of trauma in the field and some of the impacts of that as well. And we have a lot of administrative procedures and policies in place and resources to provide and assist officers when they're going through a traumatic event in the field or post incident.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else anybody care to bring up? this
Well,
evening?
if I can just make one comment about the employee assistance program, that is not necessarily just solely for if an officer experiences a traumatic event in the field while responding to a home or something similar to that. It's also used if a supervisor or another a peer employee recognizes the character of a fellow employee is for some reason not right. Maybe their demeanor has changed. Could be a circumstance at home. It could be a family stress and strain at home. It could be a possible beginning of an alcohol problem. The employee assistance is there to also help officers be recognized for problems that exist, not just from stress-related trauma from the job, but also from his personal experience.
Okay, thank you.
And to add off that, the mechanism is in place, defined in the employee assistance program, and personnel and supervisors are obligated per policy to take some type of intervention when they do recognize some of those cues from other employees to ensure that they have the opportunity to seek the assistance that they need.
Thanks for that, Lieutenant, and thank you, Chief. If there anything else anybody care to bring up this evening? And if not, we could talk about a new meeting date. And you know, I know that Mr. McConville is endeavoring to reprioritize and get this finished up. I'm thinking maybe we could look at mid to late April to come back.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Agree.
All right.
April's good. Yeah, because I know in a couple weeks I have my school's opening up fully because of the whole mandates with state. So I will be busy for the next couple weeks. So April after Easter will be good.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. When is Easter? Is Easter
It's the first Sunday in April.
Yes. Yes. Now we already have something on the 14th here at with the strategic planning committee.
Oh, that was the 12th though, with the meeting because I was at city council meeting on Monday. I thought the 14th was the 12th was with Cleveland Heights, the school board, and the city.
Right. Yeah. We do have that on the 12th. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was thinking maybe the 21st of April or the 28th of April.
Would that give Mr. McConville a chance to finish?
I'm hopeful that it will.
So maybe a week, the end is probably better. Just
Yeah,
a
20.
little
Give them
more
extra
week.
time.
One more week is,
Yeah. Sure.
if that would be
End of
helpful.
April would be good.
Yeah, 28th would be good with I agree with Sherry. Just
Okay.
28th.
I agree too.
Chief, does that work for you and Lieutenant McCarter?
Shouldn't be a problem on my end at this time. If something does come up, I'll make sure there's a representative from the department, because I'll likely have another item to present as well at the next meeting.
All right. All right. Very good. Well, then why don't we plan to reconvene on April 28th at 6 p.m. That's a Wednesday. And yeah. And I'm hopeful that by then we will have more to go over with regard to use of force.
Yes.
Okay.
Great, excellent.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, be well and be safe. I like to.
Mayor, I have a
Oh,
question. have you guys scheduled, have you guys firmed up a date for safety committee?
I think we're
Um,
the
mm,
8th.
March the 8th.
March 8th, yes. So next
Okay, March, good. Okay, I will be there because of the stuff going on with CERT, and I want to see what's happening with the CERT team. I want to hear what Chief Perko has to say on the CERT team.
Certainly. In fact, why don't we cover that real briefly right here too? I mean, in that on March 8th at 7 p.m. there will be a safety committee meeting of council. Mrs. Berry chairs those meetings,
Right,
and Chief Perko, our fire chief, will be going over the plan to reconstitute the CERT, which is the Community Emergency
response
Response,
team.
which the original CERT teams, I think, were created, or I try not to say CERT team, that's like saying ATM machine, but the original CERTs were created following 9/11, as I recall.
Right, yes,
And there's still a place for these.
right,
We have some uh, members of the community who've been here since then who got involved, got the training, and
I'm one of them.
yes, and you hope you never really need that, but there have been times where even for smaller emergencies, just having somebody with some basic training and safety skills. I remember Ari Jaffe telling me once that he had his CERT kit with him in the trunk of his car, and he encountered a car accident and was
Right.
like the first one there before any other first responders, and he got out of his car and pulled flares out of his trunk and cordoned off the area even before the police and fire department got there.
Right.
So,
That was actually the first time I met Bob Perko.
yeah, all right,
Because
excellent.
he just came on the department, I think a couple months. I can't remember. I can't remember the date, but when we did the pod over at Wiley, that's when I first met Bob and Keith. And Keith used to supply all the equipment and everything, Keith Canner. So
So who gets the training?
Well, citizens who are interested in volunteering.
yes,
Yeah, but Chief Perko will go over more of that on at the safety committee meeting. But if
right,
that interests you, then I would encourage you to come to the meeting and hear more about it, because it's more geared toward expressing to council the administration and the fire department's intentions to restart CERT. But if you want to get on the ground level and hear more right away, go ahead, and it's a public meeting. Come on in and
yeah. Yeah, Bob and I were talking about it. Chief and I were talking about it. I think at the firehouse, at the open house a couple of years ago. He was saying that he was going to talk to Shaker Heights, which has a CERT team, and I've met the Shaker Heights person in charge of the CERT team. He's a former sheriff. We were talking about that, and Bob was saying that he was going to reach out to him about it, and maybe South Euclid or Mayfield Heights has a good CERT team. So hopefully we can do a regional collaboration with those guys.
We may be able to do that, and it's one of the things we've been talking about too. Yeah.
Right. I remember.
But one of the things that excites me about this group is that we do have an engaged core of individuals from around the community who are interested in serving, interested in being more involved, and it need not begin and end right here. There are more things you can do. The CERT's one of them, and without getting all political on everybody, we have a city council and mayor's race this year, and
Oh yeah.
and
Really?
right, yeah. So, right, I have not formally announced what my intentions, but there are 2 open council seats, and Mrs. Berry's also up as well. But there are 2 folks that are term limited out, so they're going to be next year 2 new people on council, and maybe some of those people are on this call. I don't know, but if it's something you're thinking about, then getting more involved now on something like CERT is a fine thing to do.
Nah, I'm a behind the scenes guy. I'm not going to run.
Behind the scenes is essential as well. So,
Mayor,
yes,
All right.
Paul.
Mayor, the Israel has a very, very, very strong throughout the entire country, and a number of people get very active in helping the fire department and the police department, especially when it comes to injuries.
Exactly.
Unpaid. And they usually arrive at the scene prior to,
Mhm.
and they'll take care of the people who need to be taken care of. I mean,
Right.
they've done some wonderful work. So you may want to look at something that they do.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think probably similar to some of what we're describing. I know that also, like in New York City, you have Hezbollah, which is a Jewish volunteer ambulance service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Folks who've been
Yeah,
involved.
they've been around a long time, and I know they were trying to get something done around here. One of our residents wanted to get a team done around here too.
I do recall that. It's a little different here in the sense that our response times are very good here, and
Oh, yeah.
don't necessarily require the supplement. It arose in New York City because response times could be so sporadic and widely divergent, and it made sense. There was definitely a need. When there was a rabbi who had to wait 40 minutes for an ambulance, and it was too late.
Right.
And that was, a calling was heard from that should not be allowed to happen again. And while it's it should not be called, merely a Jewish ambulance service. It's for everybody. They will they take the call from anyone, but it's certainly organized within that community. So
Yeah, and I know John Carroll has their EMS. Their students have their EMS, which is very good too. So
okay. All right. Well, great seeing everyone. And if you want to come here, learn more about the CERT, that's on the 8th. That information will be posted on the city website if it hasn't been already. And if not, we'll see you on the 28th. Or if anything else comes up that you want to talk to us about, you know where to find us.
So nice to see everyone. Take care.
Very.
Stay well.
Thanks,
God
everybody.
bless.
Bye,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.